Hello and welcome back to my channel. My hair is giving Hagrid vibes today and anyway, today we are honouring International Women's Day. International Women's Day is coming up very soon. It's just around the corner, and this video has actually been on my agenda to film for quite a while now, and I thought, what better time to put it up than right now. So we are going to be talking about female traveling as a female in 2023/2022. For anybody who doesn't already know me, my name is Kat and I have been travelling the world over the last year or so. So I am currently in New Zealand and plan to be here for at least the next 6 months. But in the last year I have also travelled to New York, Guatemala, Mexico, Costa Rica, India, Thailand, Vietnam, Bali, a little bit of Melbourne, Australia, and New Zealand. And I have had the most incredible time, and don't get me wrong, I am entirely aware of my privilege in being able to even say that. I never even thought I would be able to say that, and now I am saying it, and it's crazy. I'm very, very grateful for my experiences. I feel really, really lucky to have had them, but I am very aware that my experience traveling through all of these places has been very different to that of my boyfriend, who has been on exactly the same trip with me the whole way, and that is what I'm going to be talking about today. My experience traveling through some of these countries as a female. So here we go. We're going to start at the very beginning of the trip, New York City. So the first thing is that before I went to New York, once I told people I was going, or I started researching it for myself, I was warned by blogs, YouTube videos, people I knew. Number one, not to get on the subway on my own. And number two, to be prepared for all of the catcalling. Now actually, we are starting this video on a very positive note, because I did use the subway on my own and I actually had a very pleasant, very positive experience. Well, I don't know about positive, but neutral for sure. Most of the people on the subway, whenever I was on it, seemed to be commuters. People were keeping themselves to themselves. There wasn't anyone I ever felt particularly threatened by or specifically cautious of. And actually there were a couple of times where people would just get chatting to the people next to them. I mean, it's rare, but it happened. And that was really nice. That was very reassuring. But yeah, overall, I'd say getting on the subway was a very similar experience to getting on the tube in London. You've got to have your wits about you. You're in a big city, but overall, there's nothing bad I have to say, to be honest, other than it was really dirty. But that's it. Secondly, I didn't get catcalled once that I remember. And I say that because sometimes I do get catcalled or commented on in the streets and I completely forget about it the second after it's happened. These tend to be the less aggressive or loud or threatening comments because they happen so regularly. I've been conditioned from such a young age to hearing things like that, that genuinely they're kind of almost like, do you remember every time you've ever tied your shoelace? No. So overall, there were no standout occurrences of loud or threatening or harassing behaviour in the street in New York. However, I can't guarantee nothing happened. And that's also not to take away from other women's experiences. I think I just count myself very lucky that I didn't experience any when I was there. Okay. Moving on to Guatemala, very positive experience in New York. We are going to move into slightly more negative territory here. So we went to Guatemala. We spent 6 weeks in Guatemala, and there are 3 things that come to mind when thinking about the female experience, my female experience in Guatemala. Number 1, the lack of tampons. They literally aren't sold there. To my knowledge, they do not have tampons, only pads. This is actually the case in a lot of the less developed countries that we travel to. I can only assume it's obviously to do with the culture. Whatever it is, I don't care. Let's get tampons in every country, please. Realistically, tampons are an essential female hygiene product, and not having access to that is just... So that's the first point. Luckily, I knew this before I went and I took a stash, but I mean, you don't want to get caught short, do you? Next, and this didn't directly affect me whilst I was in Guatemala, but being aware of it definitely made me alter some of my actions to avoid potential consequences. That was very cryptic. But getting the morning after pill is practically impossible. In fact, I read somewhere, and don't quote me because this could be wrong, I don't know how reliable of a source it was that I read, but I read you can only get it in certain places, and in those certain places you can only get it if you have been raped. I don't think I really need to explain why this is so horrendous, so I will just leave that one there. And then add to it, into this situation, that abortion is illegal. Again, this didn't directly affect me whilst I was in Guatemala. I wasn't actually looking for an abortion whilst there, thankfully, because I wouldn't have found one. But living with a family there, interacting with the women and girls, it really hit home the privilege I have in my home country to access emergency birth control when and if I need it, and to have the choice to have an abortion if, when I want or need it. And like I said, while it didn't directly affect me because I'm not a citizen of Guatemala, travelling to that country I probably would have left if I'd have got into that situation and needed an abortion. I would have left and gone home anyway. But any country that doesn't physically allow abortion is just signalling that women are second-class citizens and that they don't respect women like they do men. And subconsciously, as a female, I was very aware of that throughout my entire trip. Right, here we go. India. If I was warned about any country, it was India. And to be honest, every single one of the warnings I was given was completely valid and became my reality once I stepped foot into the country. Men stare at you, you need to make sure you cover all of your skin or men will stare at you even more. You might get yourself into dangerous situations with men if you show some skin. Men view you as possessions. You might want to wear a wedding ring on your finger. Men get inappropriately close to you. Men might start touching themselves whilst looking at you. Honestly, every single one of these scenarios either happened to me or I witnessed happening to someone else. Yes, that does mean my friend was literally stood next to me with a man sat down about a metre away from us on the train station, loads of people around, touching himself, staring directly into her eyes. Needless to say, I mean, we moved down the other end of the platform, but thank God Ollie was with us. Because unfortunately, there is absolutely no way I would recommend for any female to travel India alone. And to be honest, not even like two females going together. My only advice and recommendation would be go with a male. Go with a man. And that sucks. Side note, no tampons available in India either. And when we were visiting the Taj Mahal, you had to go through a bag check on your way in, and it was all like manual, like they didn't really have machines, it was people just checking your bag. And this guy was checking in my bag and he was like looking really confused, pulled out a tampon, held it up as if it was something really suspicious, and was like, "What's this?" And I was like, a tampon? But obviously, like, I don't think he knew what a tampon was even. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, I had to basically mime how one might use it. I was like, "For my period," and I was like, oh god. And luckily I don't really get embarrassed very easily about things like that, but thank god I wasn't someone who did. Yeah, eventually he realised what it was and then like accepted it, but I mean, they don't even know what a tampon is. How can there be respect for women when one of the most basic differences between a man's body and a woman's body that happens every single month isn't even, like, they don't know anything about it, they're not clueless. Anyway, obviously there isn't that respect for women, and that's why we're doing this video. Alright, last but not least, we are moving on to Thailand. Can you tell I'm getting all like extra gestury now because we're getting to the end of the video and I'm psyched up. There were two scenarios in Thailand where I was made to feel less than my male counterparts. The first was at a Buddhist ceremony that we were guests at, and when we entered we were like gestured to go and sit at the front, so we did. We went and sit at the front, and about a few seconds, maybe a minute later, a female member of staff came up to me and very quietly, before it all started, and she was like, "Oh, really sorry, can you move backwards a row, because it would be disrespectful to show your legs to the Buddhist monks, because we were in the front row." She was like, "Could you move back a row?" Very politely I obliged. I'm not sure if I regret obliging or not. That's another story for another day. How to handle yourself in those situations in other people's worlds and other people's cultures. That is another whole conversation. Anyway, I moved back a row. I was in shorts, so my leg was bare from about mid-thigh downwards. I will just mention, Ollie was also in shorts. He was allowed to stay in the front row. I don't know whether hairy legs are more respectful towards monks or what it is, but yes, I had to move back a row because my female legs were causing problems. And then later on in our trip we were in Chiang Mai, and Ollie and I decided to visit a temple. So we got to the temple, we had to pay a small fee to get in. I also had to pay a higher fee for a shawl and a sarong to cover up my bare skin because I was in strappy top and shorts. Bearing in mind Ollie was also in shorts, slightly longer than mine I must admit, but you know, legs are legs, no? Anyway, what I'm actually getting at is we then walked into the temple grounds, saw the first little monument, great. Then next there was like a small little mini temple building. I'm not sure what the correct name for it was, but small little mini temple building, and it had a big sign outside with a picture of a woman and a big cross through it. And it said, "No women allowed in here." And what was even better was underneath that, it had a whole paragraph explaining why women weren't allowed. It said, women aren't allowed because women menstruate, and menstruation is dirty. Needless to say, I swiftly left the vicinity. There were a couple of other girls who were getting really angry, who were really angry about it and had gone to try and get their money back and were causing quite a scene. So I actually didn't also join the money back bandwagon. I just left, and I told a couple of other women that were on their way in, I just advised them that that was the case before they went. Because I really wish I'd known before I paid the entry fee, to be honest. So to conclude my experiences as a female traveller in 2023/22, I was going to tell a story about something that happened to me very recently in an office environment in New Zealand. But I've actually made the decision not to publish it right now because it may be too risky. And I think that is all I need to say. Oh, I'm pleased to get that off my chest. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. A little bit of a different video this week, but it's something that I am really passionate about, women's rights. I mean, if you're not, why not? For anyone watching this who hasn't lived the female experience, I hope this was insightful for you and educational, and maybe made you think about a few things that you haven't thought about before. And yeah, let's celebrate women. Let's celebrate how brilliant women are. Let's celebrate how resilient women are. And let's also remember that despite women's equality progressing gigantically in the last 20, 30, 40 years, we are nowhere near where we should be. And there is still a lot of work to be done. I will be back next week with another video. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end, definitely give me a little thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel. We'll go back to the light-hearted content next week with some more New Zealand travel adventures. And goodbye!